On this episode of Purposely Curious, we sit down and talk to my friend Bernard, who talks to us about his love for motorcycles and riding. But he also walks us through the night he had a motorcycle accident and how it changed his life and the way he rides. So, grab a helmet and jump on the back of his bike and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, everyone. On today's episode, I have my friend Bernard. Say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. So I wanted to have Bernard on because he has gone through some things that I find very interesting that maybe some of us would like to listen to. We'll get into that soon, but he and I met maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's I can't even put a number on it. Maybe 15 years ago now that I think about it.
Maybe more. I don't know. He was in a band, guys. When we were younger, we all knew somebody who was in a band, and you never went to their shows. Yeah. Or if you did, in one of the episodes before, I was telling the listeners that my brother, I used to have a Jetta. You knew me with the Jetta.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this maroon Jetta, which, I love her. I still miss her. She died on me in a car accident. Oh. I had 220,000 miles on her.
Admirable.
Yes. But that was, I think, God's way of telling me you need a new car. Yeah. I try to get it valeted.
Okay.
I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I try to get it valeted, and I told the guy, the car looked really well. Like, I'm good at maintaining my cars, and they tend to look really new. And we were in Hollywood. It was my friend Christina or Claudia's. Anyways, I told him, to turn the car on, you have to hit the gas pedal like 1 or 2, 3 times for it to start. And he was like, why don't you just park it across the street? Like, there's a parking spot right there. Dang. And I remember going into the restaurant and being like, the valet didn't want to fucking valet my car. Like, so anyways, I would put my brother's drum kit in the back seat.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I would drive him
played
everywhere.
some Tetris before.
Yes. And I would drive him around to all his shows. So that was a very nice experience. So
it's a very good sisterly action of you.
Yes. He has told me that he appreciates that I did that for him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that my mom would have done that.
Yeah.
So I'm having peppermint tea, and you're having tea as well, right?
Yeah, I'm having ginger honey tea.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Got to keep my throat warm for this. I don't know how long we're going to be talking, but...
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see where it takes us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've known each other that long. He's also a Star Wars fan. Yes.
I think fan might be an understatement, but yeah.
Oh, what would be the right term?
Well, I mean, I don't even know if there's a term for it, but I mean, for anybody listening, if you know, or if you've heard of the 501st Legion, I'm a member. So basically, we build our own costumes. They're all screen accurate. And then we'll do charity events. We'll go to hospitals.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Visit kids at hospitals. We've done some things with like pet adoptions, basically just to kind of promote the Star Wars fandom. While also, people just like taking pictures with a stormtrooper or something like that. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to live out the life of a stormtrooper, I guess. And then it's funny, you see like adults turn into little kids right away. So it's a pretty rewarding experience, but we're probably some of the most crazed fans that you could come across for Star Wars.
Yeah, I've seen some of your posts, and I commend you for that. I think that's amazing.
You. Yeah.
Yeah, I am a big fan, although I'll be honest, I haven't seen all the movies.
Okay.
I still haven't seen The Mandalorian.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God. You're going to love it though.
But it's not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
I have a lot going on in my life. So sometimes it's hard to like binge and watch TV.
Right.
The last few weeks has been even harder for me to sit down and watch TV. So, I should probably turn off my watch here. But yeah, so, I changed my work badges, every week, and so I have bought a few from my friend Natalie's shop, and I bought a bunch of Star Wars ones. So every
Yeah.
week, and men love them. I was at
Well, it's like I said, we'll
Yes.
turn into little kids right
Yeah,
away.
I showed up with the Death Star in my scrubs, and and the cashier was like, "I love your badge,"
Well, the funny thing too is I was at an event in Riverside, and it was on uh, I think it was, yeah, Marsh Air Force Base. So we were actually promoting their military exchange on base. So they had us standing out in front of their booth. We were just taking pictures with everybody. It was an air show, and military police came up, and it was like a Humvee full of like hardened soldiers. They're fully strapped with gear and everything like that, and they just jump out, and they're like, "Can we take a picture? Can we take a picture?"
Oh,
So
I
it's like,
love it.
these hardcore soldiers are just like turning into little kids, and it's always funny to see.
Yes.
So I mean, I can imagine, when you're at work and like, you see the little Star Wars character, you just kind of go, a little crazy
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. So I was just showing him next week's badge. It's Princess Leia. Yeah, it's cute, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have a Chewbacca bookmark because I love to read. And you know how we were talking about me not having time?
Right.
This week I haven't had time to read as well, which is. But don't worry, I'm gonna get back on it. But yes, that's maybe we can do an episode just on Star Wars stuff.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Yes. Okay. Adding
There you go.
There we go. We got another one. But the reason I wanted to have him on is because he rides his motorcycle. The shots that he puts up online, it's just beautiful. But one of the reasons also is something that you went through, and I think we'll get to eventually. But I wanted to see, like, are you part of any group of motorcycle riders or anything? Or
No, so I've been riding. Well, I can't say off and on. It was more like on and then off. But I guess we'll get to that. But I started in 2012 is when I first started taking classes, and it was I can't even remember the name of it, but it's a California riding school. It's pretty popular around this. They have different sites around the state, and it's one of the easiest ways, I guess, to learn and also to get your license. Pretty much, it's technically possible to get it all in the same weekend. So a few friends of mine, and we were getting together and like discovered that we had this love of motorcycles. And I don't know if it's just like quarter life crisis or whatever you want to call it. But we all basically wanted to ride at the same time. So a few of us took the classes, got our licenses, got our bikes, or some people got their bikes first, and that was how they took the class. So yeah, we just all started riding together. And as far as groups go, we tried to like put a little club together, which I won't get too into just because we didn't really form too much. But there's this whole like club culture and around motorcycles and patches, and I'm sure you've heard of like the Hells Angels and the Mongols and
oh yeah, I took care of
Vagos and all that. So
Hell's Angel.
oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Oh Lord, if I could tell you what he told me.
But yeah, there's this whole like subculture of that, and within club to club, there's all these unwritten rules that you kind of have to abide by. Turf is obviously a big issue, so I mean, we just wanted to ride together and just kind of like recognize that we're as a group, but it didn't really pan out, I guess. But yeah, I mean, as far as groups go, it was just like my friends riding together.
Yeah. I noticed guys take it as a bonding
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. And it's definitely a good way to meet people. Before COVID times anyway, there was always like motorcycle meets. The same thing with like the car culture. There's car meets, and a lot of times they blend together. I guess you could just say like the gearhead thing, but it's a good way to socialize, to meet new people. I've known some people who were like, pretty, I wouldn't say antisocial, but they're like introverted. Got on a bike, and then that kind of opened them up into riding with new people, and that's how they met probably some of their best friends is through motorcycles. So it's definitely a good avenue to follow through.
Yeah. And what was your first bike?
So my first bike was a Cleveland CycleWorks Misfit. It was a fairly new company, and for me, it's like I didn't want to jump into a big bike right away. and there's a bunch of different thoughts on this of like what your first bike should be. For me, it's like I've always known the dangers, so I kind of wanted to stay on the safe side. So I got a smaller displacement bike, just to kind of learn on. So it was like a 250cc, which is like usually what people learn on in the motorcycle school. Actually, that's usually what they had were like 250cc bikes. So it's like low power, but I mean you learn pretty much everything on that bike. So I was riding that for a good almost a good year, and then as we started going out riding more with my friends and things like that, it was getting kind of hard to keep up on freeways and things like that.
So the horsepower wasn't.
Yeah, the horsepower wasn't there. Also, the handling wasn't all that great. If anybody knows this bike, I mean, the company is, I believe they're from Ohio. But basically what they do is they import these, or they get their bikes made in China. And they're basically like modified scooters.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like they're pretty small.
So of course you're not going to keep up
exactly.
with a modified scooter.
Right. So eventually I started looking at other bikes and, trying to upgrade. And so my second bike was actually, and I bought it brand new. Again, there's more thoughts on, if you should buy a used or a new bike. Perfectly fine to buy a used bike, by the way. But I bought my new just because I was still new to motorcycling and didn't want any of like the issues. But if you ask most people, it's like bikes are relatively simple to work on compared to like cars and things like that. So again, it's perfectly fine to buy a used bike and you can probably get by. And a lot of people end up doing their own maintenance and things like that just because it is so simple to work on. But I ended up getting a 2013 Triumph Thruxton. For anybody who's unfamiliar, it's basically, if you think of like bikes from the 50s and 60s and old cafe racers, it's basically that with newer technology. So, retro classic, I guess was the term for it. So I didn't really want to crotch rock it just because like I don't trust myself to get one. And then the like Harleys and cruisers of that sort didn't really fit with me, I guess. I didn't like the peg position, the riding position, things like that. Just not my style. So I felt like the Thruxton was like a good in between. So,
what's your take on custom made bikes?
I mean, for me, it's like if it's got wheels, I love it. So I think the custom made bikes are and I've seen some really crazy ones. The Born Free show, for anybody out there who rides, they know it's like, unfortunately it didn't happen obviously because of COVID recently. But it's a pretty big custom bike show. And you'll see some of the craziest builds from like the craziest builders around the country and even around the world.
Does Jesse James attend those?
I don't know if he's been. I'm sure he has. Kind of lesser known names, I would say, but like still big in the motorcycling world.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times they give the opportunity to smaller shops that are trying to build their name.
Yeah.
So you see some.
Should.
Yeah. And you see some real creativity coming out of that. And I just saw a video of one guy who's building literally all of his parts in his backyard. So you see people they'll source parts from smaller companies and things like that, which is normal. But this guy was actually like forging parts in his backyard. So he would build molds, create molds on his own. So I mean, you basically never see another bike the way his looks. His builds look completely unique. So, I mean, you have that level of customization, and then you have guys who just like paint the bike. So, I mean, whatever floats your boat. Everybody has their own level of what they think is cool. To me, it's all great. If you enjoy riding it, if you think it looks cool, then more power to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I love guys who like ride bikes.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. I didn't mean to laugh like that.
We'll take it.
But I've always been fascinated. Obviously we grew up watching like Tom Cruise. What was the movie?
Top Gun.
Yes. So, I was born in 83. So those were the movies. And there was a lot of movies with motorcycle riders.
Right.
So I think my fascination with the motorcycle riders came from my childhood here in the U.S., right? It was almost, it was like to be patriotic was to have a motorcycle. Now, whether I ride them, that's another story. I do not. I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat. But
I might have to get you on the back of mine at some point.
Oh my God. So fun story. I was telling him that I've had 3 boyfriends in my lifetime, and 2 of them were motorcycle riders. The last one wasn't. But with the first one, I got on and he was going maybe 10 miles an hour. I'm not even sure. Not that fast. And I was screaming. I was like 20, 21. So whenever we would go places, he would take his bike and I would just be in my car, like following
so you'd
him.
right behind him.
So it's funny, but yeah. I'm at an age where I'm just like, maybe I'll take you up on that. Maybe I will be less of a scaredy cat.
I mean, we don't have to go all crazy and go into the canyons.
No,
or anything
but
like
I'm
that.
telling you, my boyfriend was going like 5 miles an hour, and I was like, stop! I want off. Like,
oh man.
But and that was always one of the biggest fears I had, is if there was ever something on the news, I would be like, hey, if it was even off the 405, like. I saw this. Are you okay? And he was like, yeah, I'm fine. So that brings me to what you went through.
Yeah.
Do you care sharing?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny you mentioned the 405 because that's pretty much where it happened. But so I bought the Thruxton in the summertime. Loved riding it. It's a great bike. I actually have another one, and I guess we can get to that later. But I love riding it. I was taken into the canyons every now and then. Again, still what I consider relatively new to riding. So I was still like learning, but obviously there's no better teacher than experience. So just trying to go through it. But at the time, and really the whole reason that I actually decided at that time to go ahead and buy a motorcycle, I was working. I live in Carson, and I was working in Irvine, which is. By car, it's a good 30 to 40 minute drive, which doesn't seem like too much. But in the afternoons, rush hour traffic is crazy. California is the only state where you can actually split lanes.
Now, can you explain that to some of us who may not know what that means?
Okay, so when you're in the carpool lane and a motorcycle zips by you and you're like, that's crazy, how can they do that? It's actually legal. So if you look at motorcycling or scootering, whatever, anywhere else in the world, and there's different names for it. We call it lane splitting here in California, mostly. In other parts of the world, they call it filtering because it's like you filter through the cars. So imagine like a line of traffic, 405 at 5:30, nobody's moving. So you'll see a motorcycle go through, basically riding the line in between cars. That's, lane splitting, white lining, filtering, whatever, what have you. But it's basically a way for, and there's been studies on this too. I can get into that too. But in California, it's the only one. It's the only state where you can actually do that, and it's okay. So you'll see a motorcycle zip by you in traffic. Sorry, but we can do that. You'll see the cops do it too. And if you really think about it, it's like one less vehicle, whatever you want to say, one less vehicle that's in traffic with you. So it's actually better for you in your cars to have the motorcycles going by you. It's one less person you have to wait on. And also, like say for example, at a stoplight, you'll probably see bikes filter out, go between cars and then filter towards the front, towards the crosswalk area. And that's actually helped. And there's been studies on this too. Rear end collisions are really high, especially at intersections. Obviously, we're kind of hard to see, and that's admittedly. So if a car is in front of a bike and the bike is just waiting, there's a higher chance that you're probably going to tap, or hit the bike from behind if they're just sitting in the lane. But if they split the lane and go towards the front, there's obviously a less chance that that's going to happen. So I mean, there's obviously good things all around on that, and admittedly, there are some dummies who go through, like, zip through at 100 miles an hour, which is I don't suggest doing ever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's you know, long story short, I guess that's lane splitting, and it's legal in California.
Yeah.
But
See,
that was my thing for getting a bike, is I
yeah.
wanted to be able to do that because when I was leaving work, I'd be stuck in traffic for up to 2 hours sometimes, and having to drive all that way and then do it all again the next day, it's pretty stressful, and frustrating. So I was like, well, if I had a motorcycle, I could split through and then get home at a normal time, I guess, or reasonable time. So picked up a bike, and that was the whole purpose of that. Unfortunately, so when this happened, it was Halloween, actually, Halloween 2013. My thing was, okay, well, I'll just stay home and pass out candy to the kids with my parents. Uh, Basically, I stopped at, but I was dating a girl at the time, and I had hung out at her place first, and the sun went down. This is all like recipe for disaster, by the way. But the sun went down. It's already hard to see a motorcycle, and you guys know this. For me, I have a white helmet. I tried to do everything I could to try to make myself visible. I had a physical training belt from the military. I just got it from like the exchange or something like that. But it's basically just like a reflective belt, and I usually had that around my backpack when I was going to work, just so just to add a little more to the visibility, and it was reflective. But basically, I was maybe two exits away, so from my exit for home, and I started going over to the slow lane. Granted, I wasn't going slow. I won't get into how fast I was going, but it was. I mean, you guys do it in your car, so I wasn't going that fast. Just normal car speed, I guess. But I started slowing down, and then I noticed there was a car in the second to the slow lane. I guess that's the number 2 lane. I'm not really sure, but easily going like 45, 50 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to pass this guy because I'm about to exit. And he had his blinker on the entire time I saw him. And I was probably creeping up on him for like a good half mile. And I saw that his blinker was on. It's like, okay, this guy just left it on. He's going super slow. This is just an accident. He didn't mean to have it on. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just pass. Stupid thing, admittedly, I passed on the right. You just never do that. But I did it, and I was passing on the right because I was about to exit. Next thing you know, I get right next to him, and he starts creeping into the lane. And there's really not much room where this happened. On my right side, there was no shoulder, and this is at the 405 710 interchange. Mary, I'm sure you're familiar with the area, but for anybody who doesn't know, there's a interchange split, and right where it happened, there's a curb, and I guess you could call it an island between the exchange lane, and there was really nowhere for me to go. It was either get hit by the car or run onto the curb. So I was pretty much in the gutter already at this point, between that point, and his side view mirror tapped my handlebar, and that was enough to like pretty much upset the bike. Especially at pretty much at any speed, that would just upset the bike.
Yeah.
So the handlebar started going wonky, and I actually flew over the handlebars. We call that high siding. So I flew up in the air, and in my head, I was like, oh, crap, this is exactly what my mom didn't want to happen.
Yeah.
My first thought,
Yeah.
So I landed head first. I remember that specifically. I landed head first, and I started cartwheeling. And I could hear the other crazy thing about it, I never knocked out.
Wow.
Yeah. So, started cartwheeling, and then it felt like forever. I was just spinning and spinning, and I could hear like cars honking, tires screeching. I don't know where the bike is at this point. I'm just not on it, and I'm pretty sure I was tumbling on the island. And then eventually I was like, okay, I gotta like something's got to stop me or slow down. And eventually, like I stopped cartwheeling and started tumbling, and then I started sliding. Um, so yeah, I ended up stopping by the slide. And
By the slide, meaning the.
like literally I was like sliding on my right shin.
Oh.
Yeah, so no more tumbling, just sliding.
Okay.
Came to a stop.
Sliding down or on the actual.
Sliding on the street.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. So
Ouch.
came to a stop, and then just quickly tried to assess where I was, and I was actually in the middle of the transition lane. So my first thought was I got to get somewhere safe. And luckily it was still close to the island, so I actually ran off the lane and into the island area, and I just kind of laid there. And
Did people come and help?
yeah, actually,
Well, did the driver stop?
the driver did not stop. This was a complete hit and run, and the thing is like I don't even know if the guy realized what he did. Again, it was dark. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
just benefit of the doubt, I
Yeah.
guess, and judging by the way he was driving, again, 45 miles an hour, not in the slow lane, blinker on forever, I guess every intention to change lanes, but didn't. You guys know those types of drivers.
Yeah.
They're probably not paying attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, it never stopped. One guy actually hit my bike, and he was the first one to run over to me. And he was like, are you okay? And obviously I didn't knock out. I'm still conscious. And like, I saw my fingers were broken. Like that was a weird thing to see, actually, because I've never broken a bone in my life up until that point. So to see my finger, basically throwing up gang signs, I don't know. It was just like, it was pretty bad.
So I kind of know what you're talking. It doesn't compare to what you've been through, but this is a terrible story, but I broke my pinky playing dodgeball.
Oh yeah.
And my pinky was like over here.
It looked like an L, right? Like,
yeah, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look right. Like,
yeah.
But I guess the adrenaline.
You don't notice it.
I saw it.
Yeah,
but
you
I
don't
was
feel
feeling
it.
any pain.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you saw it and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This isn't normal.
Yeah. So I mean, let me back up a little bit. So I got on the island, and then I actually, I tried to do a self-assessment because I grew up with cars pretty much, right? And we would go to the racetrack every now and then. We'd see like on another part of a track, the motorcycles going, and I remember distinctly one bike going off, and his bike disintegrated. Like he was going that fast, and he was thrown off the bike, and he was lying down. And the first thing the medical crew did was just lay there, don't move. And so in my head, I was like, okay, I don't know. And again, the adrenaline's pumping. Like, I don't know if I'm doing something that's gonna make things worse. So I was actually trying to look at myself like, what's okay, what's broken, what's this and what's that. But then I was like, you know what? It's gonna be an EMT's job to come in and do that assessment. So I just sat there. But I did see obviously my hands.
Both hands? Like what was broken?
So the worst one and the most obvious one was my right middle finger was the one that was like basically, doing an L. I felt swollenness in my left hand, which I figured, it's probably busted too, but I just didn't look. By the way, I'm wearing gloves. They admittedly were not the best. They were leather gloves, so they protect against abrasions and things like that, but there was no like plastic capping or anything like that to protect from impacts. Nothing really to prevent the fingers from going directions they shouldn't. So they offered some level of protection, but not the best. Had a leather jacket, obviously a really good helmet. I actually had riding shoes, which helped. The worst thing, I was just wearing regular jeans. So when I tell you I was sliding, I was eventually sliding on my skin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. More on that later.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, we could talk about injuries too if you want, but
I know, and that's the thing. I'm a nurse, and you guys hear the reactions I'm having. I'm like, oof.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Oh.
But yeah, actually, I sat there, and once I saw my hands, I was like, well, there's really nothing I'm gonna do for myself. And it's kind of funny that I said I ran off of the ran out of the lane and onto the island. When I looked down at my leg and I saw how bad it looked, I was like, oh crap! Like, how is that? How did I even run here? You know,
Adrenaline.
the adrenaline's crazy. But yeah, some guy was passing by in the exchange lane that I ran out of. He passed by and he was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. And then there was another guy that just ran. I guess he had actually hit my bike. And I saw him run out of the car, and he was like, don't worry about my car. What's up with you? What do you need? And so I was like, well, just call 911, man. And then he ended up calling. The guy that was passing by saw what happened, and he was like, you know, after he saw that I was okay, he took off, which is, you know, totally fine. Funny part, I guess, I have a Bluetooth communicator on my helmet. So my first thought, you know, like, this guy's already calling 911. I don't know what else I'm going to do. So I called my mom because she was expecting me, you know, like, it's Halloween. I'm supposed to pass out candy for the kids. I called my mom, and she saw, obviously, caller ID. It's me. And so she's, you know, she goes, trick or treat.
Oh.
I'm like, hey, I got hit. And she's like, trick or treat. Cause I guess she didn't hear what I said. So I was like, hey, I got hit on the freeway. And her first reaction, I'm Filipino, by the way, some of you guys will understand this. Her first reaction was, oh, I told you. So that's, you know, that's how my mom found out.
That's because she loves you.
It's true. It's true. But I felt so bad. I was just like, hey, you know what? Like, it happened. I'm alive.
Yes.
You know, that's the most important thing. But yeah, I'm going to the hospital at some point. So.
Mm-hmm. So the paramedics arrive.
Yeah, paramedics. Well, CHP arrived first.
CHP.
And he, you know, I guess he called in the other departments or other functions, and you know, he kind of blocked off traffic to make sure that nobody was coming close. Because I mean, the island's big, but it's like, you know,
you never know.
You never know. So he's blocking off traffic. Paramedics came up. I think one of them rides. Because they were basically cutting things off, but one guy was very adamant, don't cut his jacket. And I was like, well, I can move my hands, you know, I can move them through the sleeves and stuff like that. So if you need to get it off, we can get it off. But he's like,
now,
okay, yeah.
Explain that to us non-writers. Why is that important not to cut the jacket?
Well, I wear a full leather jacket. And even if you buy just like a regular, like, stylish leather jacket, they're pretty expensive. And this one was specifically made for motorcycling, so there's actually armor along the spine, in the forearm elbow area, and then also on the shoulders, so you can easily cut in through and, you know, just remove everything. But these jackets cost like up to, I've seen like $3,000 jackets before.
Okay, so that's why he was like,
yeah, he was very adamant, do not cut the jacket.
Cut it. Okay, that now
so I was appreciative of that.
Yes.
And then you know, they cut through my jeans, which there really wasn't much left of anyway. They cut my shirt, and then it got down to the riding shoes too. And then again, the guy was like, do not cut his shoes off. And found out later it was at least one of my ankles was sprained. But no, obviously just no issue taking the shoes off. Hurt a little bit, but, you know, thankfully they didn't cut it. I still use those same shoes today, actually, but they were able to save my riding gear, obviously, except the helmet. The helmet was completely thrashed.
But it did its job.
And absolutely did its job. Yeah. So, yeah, they, you know, threw me on a stretcher. When I told them how fast I was going, they were like, okay, yeah, we have to, like, you know, brace your neck and all this other stuff. Took me to Long Beach Memorial, which was the closest hospital. And again, I think one of the paramedics actually rode, because he put my helmet right between my legs as they were wheeling me in so that they could see, like, what happened. But yeah, I you know, went to the hospital. They did their thing. Lots of morphine. My first time with morphine. That was kind of weird. CAT scan was okay. Yeah, pretty much anything you can think of. They were, you know, running tests just to make sure I was fine. But yeah, nothing too major, I guess. I don't know if we should talk about injuries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it.
Okay, yeah. So
obviously you said your fingers were tore up.
Yeah, my fingers were tore up. Middle finger on the right hand was busted in two places. Um, on my left hand, there was a fracture pretty much going through the entire palm. My thumb was broken. Obviously, there were cuts and scrapes everywhere. The jacket is very protective, but in a crash situation, it could ride up in some places. So I have like road rash along my lower back where the jacket kind of rode up in some places. My legs were completely scratched up, road rashed. Again, I was just wearing regular jeans, so it just ate the pavement just ate through that. And speaking of eating through, the absolute worst, at least visually, I would say, was when I was sliding on my right side. The pavement actually ate through my skin on my knee, so it kind of shaved a little bit of the kneecap away.
Ooh. So you could see the bone.
I want to say you could see the bone, but I don't know if that was just like ligaments, but pretty close, and sprained ankle. But other than that, like even my head was fine, even though that's the first thing that hit. But yeah, the knee is probably like the worst.
Oh Lord.
And I do on the anniversary of it, I post every year just to try to bring awareness on Instagram and Facebook. Just watch out for motorcycles. We're there.
Check your blind spot.
Check your blind spots. Check twice. One of my biggest pet peeves, and it's happened quite a lot, is people crossing the double yellow on the carpool lane. Because we're not expecting that. Like I said, we split lanes, and there's a certain level of expectation when you're splitting a lane and that a car is not supposed to cross, and then when one does, it's just like, it's a recipe for disaster. So
yeah,
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, guys. Oh, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah. Thanks, me too.
So what was your recovery? Well, no, before we get to that. So mom showed up?
Oh, geez.
Yeah, we want to hear.
Oh, boy.
Did she hit you?
No. I guess she figured that I had been through enough, but...
She was done yelling at you earlier.
Yeah. Even though it wasn't much. I mean, I think that's, for most of us, it's enough.
Yeah. I think, too, it's just, they love us so much. That's their biggest fear.
Yeah.
So
they just want to make sure we're okay.
Their reaction is to yell,
Yeah, but she walked in and, well, I mean, obviously I told the paramedics and everybody how to get into my phone and who to call. So they called my family. And they showed up and called my girlfriend at the time too, and she showed up later. She was out at church with her sister, but my mom was the first one I saw, and she gave me the biggest death stare I've ever seen in my life. But it's like I'm strapped to this table. It's like, what could I do? Like I can't. I'm sorry was like the only thing I could kind of come up with.
Yeah.
But she, obviously she was just happy to see that I was, I was okay.
Yeah.
My dad was actually at work. He was doing some contract work. And so he was actually on a site where he couldn't have a cell phone, government contracting work. So he had to leave his cell phone in a lobby, and he didn't find out until later. But my mom eventually called when I was moved from the emergency room into like just a normal recovery room, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But she called my dad, and then she told me what happened. And I don't know if this is just like a dad thing. It was a very dad response, right? So she called and she's like, oh, Bernard was in an accident. He was hit on the freeway. We're in the hospital right now. And his first question, is he okay? Is he alive? And she's like, yeah. He's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go back to work. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a very dad response.
It is a very dad response. But
Yeah.
I mean, he got the important stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
So now you're recovered, and did you go like without riding for a certain period of time, or were you just back on the bike?
I wanted to. I still had the little 250. I never sold it.
That was your first one.
My first bike, yeah. The Thruxton unfortunately was totaled. So I mean, it was just completely thrashed. I'm sure it did just as many cartwheels as I did, just by the look of it. So yeah, I didn't have that. And then obviously the recovery period, physical therapy and all that stuff. So once I was actually able to ride, I rode the little one a little bit just around the neighborhood, just to like, because it's literally riding a bike, right? So the feeling was still there, and I knew. And this was like, I don't know, probably like 6 months down the line. Like fully recovered, I could walk and everything's like that. So I did get on the bike and just kind of rode around the neighborhood. But other than that, I never really took it out again. So there was a good stretch of time where I just didn't ride. And I think priorities in life kind of changed too. I mean, I was changing jobs too, so the commute wasn't nearly as bad. I never had the love of motorcycling kind of fade away. Like I still watch MotoGP. A lot of my friends still ride. I followed like Instagram accounts of riders, and the technology was changing, so I'm a big like gear nerd, so I just paid attention to that. But yeah, priorities in life just didn't really prompt me to get another bike. And I didn't really feel like riding the little 250 anymore. Yeah. And plus, obviously my parents, especially my mom, was like, just don't get back on the bike again. And so I kind of respected that as well. And then, I just put it away for a while. And after a while, I started getting the itch again.
Yeah. It's in you.
It's in me. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like most people who don't ride would never understand this, and I don't expect them to. But anybody who has ridden, it's you feel it, you miss it, and even if like something happens, I've known people who like had accidents and they just got rid of their bikes and never rode again, but they miss it. They really miss it. So I was at that point, and I guess so. My relationship fizzled out, and this was after 6 years of being together. But when I was saying priorities changed, it was like my financial focus, I guess, wasn't on getting a bike. It was on getting a ring, I'll be honest. But obviously that didn't pan out. And this probably occurred March of last year. Things started changing, obviously. So relationship ended, COVID hit, lockdowns happened, and again, my priorities were, and things were refocusing, shifting again. So I thought, what better way to kind of fight this mental battle of the pandemic than to get back on a bike?
Yeah.
So I started looking again, and I don't know, you want to call it fate or whatever, but I found a bike in Minnesota. Same year, same color, same model as the one that I wrecked in. Including all the modifications that I had and all the modifications that I had planned to do. So it was like, well, this is like the bike. I mean, this is it. So
Destiny.
Destiny. So yeah, I called up the dealership, did the deed, and now that's my ride now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important because you and I were talking about our mental health as far as, the pandemic has hit some of us harder than others.
Right.
And so we have to figure out ways that avenues to make us feel better.
Exactly.
And so, yes, I'm sure Mom wasn't happy then.
No, not at all.
Yeah. How'd you tell her?
My original plan, was just to show up and I have it. And I don't remember exactly what happened, that tipped her off. But I think, and this is completely my fault. I should have just done this. So in the midst of all this, I guess 7-year gap, right? I had moved out, and bought my own house, and, we still leave stuff at our parents' house, right? So I went back there and I was like, crap, I got to get my shoes, of all things. Like I have my jackets there at home, at my home. My helmet's already there. It's the shoes. So I was like, hey, where are the motorcycle shoes? Because obviously, like I hadn't lived there for years, and she had moved things, and she's like, oh, it's here in this closet. What do you need them for? And I'm not gonna lie to my mom, So I was like, I bought another bike.
Yeah.
And oh my god, she was so pissed.
Yeah.
My dad, again, typical dad response. He's like, "Well, you know what happened last time. Just be careful." So, she's still not happy about it at all, but she understands that I needed it. So, hats off. Thanks, Mom. Love you.
You don't show her this episode.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she doesn't need the reminder of what happened.
Yeah.
Even though I do post about it every year, it's just
She might be like, "Really? Is that what you think of me? That I'm always yelling at you?"
It's not that bad. But yeah, she has described that as the worst night of her life. So it's
I bet.
It's always hard to try to keep that in mind, and then still try to keep your own sanity too, and then be your own person. I guess that's it's always hard for us, especially like us who are like family focused, and just trying to please everybody, I guess, is the hard part.
So now that you've been through this accident and you kind of went through the details as far as what you were wearing that day, what have you changed as far as how you dress when you ride now?
Okay, so the first thing that I bought that was completely new, riding pants.
Are those expensive too?
They were at a time, and I think that's why I put them off. Well, there were two things. There's like, one, riding pants were ugly as hell, and two, they were really expensive at the time. But now, considerable time has passed. Materials are a lot better and a lot cheaper. So for I would say like it's reasonably priced these days, especially if knowing what I know, it's like, what do you value your health and your limbs, I guess. But I was able to buy a few different pairs of riding jeans, riding slacks even that I wear to work, and then over pants as well, which is just like if you're wearing regular pants and you can slide these kind of over them, just like commuter pants. That was my big thing, is having that. The leather jacket, it's the same leather jacket. Just because it was designed specifically for motorcycling and motorcycle riding, and I felt like it was going to do the job again. Plus, it looks cool. I had to get a new helmet, obviously. You're supposed to change it every 5 years or so anyway. But obviously the other one was like completely thrashed, and once you have a wreck, you're not supposed to wear it again.
Did you get the same make?
I got the same brand. I didn't get the same model. I actually moved up a model. So there's different levels of for the helmets. They have to have a certification, DOT certification, as the bare minimum. The problem with that is the testing is it's literally bare minimum. And what I mean is I have a full face helmet, a typical like, Power Ranger looking helmet, right?
Power
yeah.
Rangers.
The certification that helmet goes through as a bare minimum. And I'm sure you've seen like Harley riders or cruisers. I'm not singling out Harleys, but you guys know you wear these things. They're basically like skull caps, right? It just looks like a baseball cap almost. That little piece of plastic or whatever passed the same test as my helmet.
Oh wow.
So if that tells you anything about that DOT certification, the bare minimum, it's really the bare minimum. Like you will die wearing that little skull cap thing. But it's approved and it's legal. So I actually went up. Well, even my old helmet had a European certification, which is the same type of certification, but there's more tests and more rigorous testing. And there's even an even higher level. It's typically found on like racing helmets. I didn't go up that high, but I thought about it just because an extra level of protection, I guess, or peace of mind, really. But the ECE rating is the one that I had on the helmet that I crashed with, and I figured, okay, well that's saved me once. It can definitely save me again. No guarantee, but it's a lot better than just the bare minimum DOT spec helmets. But I actually went up a model to, at the time it was the brand's racing model. So just a little extra protection, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I did stick with the same brand and a higher model. And I've kind of as far as like looking at helmets for the future and stuff like that, I'll probably do the same thing. Just like look at that level of certification, just so I know what I'm getting. Yeah.
And so have you changed the way you ride since the accident?
Yeah.
How so?
I don't commute like I used to. And again, through changing jobs, I'm closer to home now. So I do ride maybe once or twice a week at most to work. But mostly it's on the weekends for fun. I know people drive crazy no matter what day or what time of day it is, but I feel like it's less of a stressful commute on the weekends, as opposed to like the work week. People are like pissed off from work and not paying attention and things happen. But yeah, I ride mostly on the weekends, just for fun. And at a leisurely pace, not, trying to go balls out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you guys who don't live out here in California, in the Los Angeles area, we have a reputation of when there isn't traffic, right? When there's traffic, we're not moving, right?
Yeah.
But people go 20, 25, sometimes 30 miles over the speed limit if there's no traffic. So we do have a rap of driving maniacally.
Crazy.
And it's just, the reason I look at my blind spot is because when I took my ex used to make fun of me because I literally turned my head completely. I just did it. But when I did my driving test when I was 16, that was literally everything I was not doing.
Oh, yeah, they told me that too.
Yeah, so I barely passed. And she said, and when I looked at the paper, I would never look at my blind spot. So I learned from that. But I know that sometimes, even when we look at our blind spot, you said do it twice. Because this happens to us when we look in our blind spot, there's no car. The other car on the lane over did the same thing. So you guys both try to switch at the same time. So, just, I guess, a reminder to be careful, and I can speak for many drivers. There's asshole bike riders out there too, know. So let's just try to be more cautious. Yeah. Both you guys as bike riders and us drivers, right? Right. And, not take everything so personal on the street because we're all, one ride away from disaster potentially, right? So. And
I think that's one good thing for me that I noticed when I first started riding, and then it's coming back to me again now that I'm back in it. When you're on a bike, you learn to let things go a lot faster. Like when you're in your car and somebody cuts you off, you're pissed and you're like, oh, I'm gonna tailgate this guy. Yeah. I don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah, I've never been one to have road rage, although there are times obviously drivers could upset you, but one, I drive for work a lot. And two, when I was in nursing school, there was a psychology teacher who mentioned, someone cut you off, but you're upset that they cut you off. Yeah. But the driver doesn't know who the fuck you are.
Exactly.
The driver is probably going through some midlife crisis, going through, and so
you never know what somebody's going through.
The way he explained it, I was like, why he has a point. You're personalizing someone that's not necessarily attacking you because they don't know you.
Right.
So after that, I'm like, I hope they're not going through something hard or, I just
let it go. I mean, it's only going to make you mad,
Yes. Yes.
Like you said, like that other person has no clue who you are.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll never forget that. And then because I've also, like I told you, I dated my two first loves, rode motorcycles. I'm, at least for myself,
you have that personal connection.
Yeah. So if I'm in the carpool lane or a lane, I make way.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's just how I'm trained because, they took up so many years of my life that I was just trained or, you would hear them complain about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I always move to the side. And I
appreciate
also,
that, by the way.
Yes. And I see motorcycle riders wave me thank absolutely. You. And I'm like, okay. So that they see that I specifically was like, I'm moving to the side in the lane, So it's just, let's all be good drivers and as much as possible. And when I say good is be good to each other. Yes, there's a lot of crazy people out there. Yes, we drive like maniacs out here.
Gotta love California.
Yes, yes. And if you're not from here, we just learned something that it is legal.
Yeah.
What was the term you used?
Lane split.
Lane split. Yeah. So don't be mad at them
motorcyclists, please.
because it's legal. So
yeah. Oh, another thing on that too is like, you know, you mentioned that you move over. You don't have to. It's a very nice gesture though, and we do appreciate that. But most of the time, if a bike's gonna, you know, riders know when they can fit.
Yeah.
If you see somebody like kind of like hovering behind you, just make sure that's probably a sign that you're actually blocking them. And I've seen this plenty of times, and again, a lot of people don't know that it's legal. So I've seen people, and it's happened to me quite a few times, where they'll actually like move to block me off.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
That's actually against the law, to block a motorcyclist trying to pass. So just heads up.
Yeah, heads up. I didn't know that. So I moved to the side, which is, I guess, but it's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad, you know, that you're back on a bike.
Yeah, me too.
Know, and I'm sure, you know, people have learned from this episode. You know,
I hope so. Yeah.
I really hope so too.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, they're people, you know, and just remember that, like he said in the detail, is like the mirror just barely tapped his thing and he was done. And so, you know, let's try to share the
road.
Share the road. And if you drive, you know, if you're driving a bike yourself, you know, and you're an ass all the time, like just, you know, like maybe calm down. Like let's this goes for both types of drivers, right? Oh
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
That was episode 45 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.